not, I guess, the PowerPoint. It's the flashier. It is the Go to town.
Nick, Joe, and I did Arthur Schopenhauer. He's a German philosopher, so if you don't know how to say his name, there's like a phonetic kind of spelling there. Yeah. Like Arthur Schopenhauer.
Yeah. Alright, Arthur's bio. What did Mr. Schopenhauer see and do throughout his life? Arthur was born in Danzig, which is current-day Poland, on February 22nd, 1788. His dad bought and sold things to make money for his family, and all the grown-ups call that being a merchant. And his mom wrote stories, and there's Danzig right there. When the evil Prussian Empire conquered Arthur's town in 1793, Arthur's family moved to Hamburg, Germany, which is pictured right there. And his family moved around a lot, just traveled places, and he eventually learned 7 different languages, or smarty pants. And he also went to schools in several countries, such as Austria, England, Germany, and Switzerland, learning stuff. He was kicked out from a school called the Gymnasium of Gotha because he didn't listen to directions. He had bad behavior. He eventually entered into the University of Göttingen, where he learned how to create his own ideas, and he was introduced to these famous guys named Immanuel Kant, Plato, and he also, that's where he started creating his pessimistic philosophy. For those who don't know what pessimistic means, that means just very negative as opposed to being positive. He then went to the University of Berlin, which is in Germany, where he started to write down his ideas and started creating the documents such as On the Fourfold Root of the Principle of Sufficient Reason and The World as Will and Representation. Here's a couple tough times that I'll talk about that kind of caused him to be such a negative Nancy, as I say right there. In 1819, Arthur made a baby with a woman who was not his wife. Grown-ups call that being an illegitimate child. And the baby died in the same year it was born. Arthur taught students at the University of Berlin, which I said he attended, and he was kind of cocky with his smarts, and he decided that he could compete with another famous guy named G.W.F. Heigl, and he scheduled a speech or a lecture during the same time Heigl was making a speech, and only 5 people came to Arthur's classes, and from then on he always criticized lecture halls, probably because he didn't do well, and he saw that they weren't significant. Also, Arthur hit a woman who was quote-unquote annoying him, and the trial that went underway made him give her money for the next 20 years, and on her death certificate, he kind of wrote a statement pretty much saying, "Oh, I'm happy she's dead." So he's kind of a mean guy. He was also rejected by a young girl who he thought was pretty, and he was kind of bummed out. So all these negative experiences cause his negative way of thinking. And on this picture you can see he's being cocky. I'm way better than Heigl. Relationship with mommy. When Arthur's dad died, his mom wanted him to become a merchant, like I said Arthur's dad was, but Arthur was really bad at this, so he went back to school, and that kind of made mommy mad, and she would kick him out of the house, and eventually, or ultimately, Arthur died with only 2 living things in his house, which were his 2 poodles. So, pretty sad and lonely. Mom also criticized many of his writings, including On the Fourfold Root of the Principle of Sufficient Reason, and said that no one would understand it, and Arthur was kind of mad about that too, so relationship with mommy was not very good. As an older man, Arthur moved to Frankfurt, Germany, because a lot of people in Berlin were getting sick because of a disease called cholera. He wrote several works when he was in Frankfurt, including The Will of Nature, The 2 Basic Problems of Ethics, and Byproducts and Emissions. He eventually died on September 21st, 1860 in Frankfurt because his heart hurt, and his fame eventually grew afterwards. So, before I go into the philosophy, I should explain a couple of short videos that we'll be revealing throughout the next couple slides. And we created this presentation during the Christmas season. And so while we were brainstorming, we kind of digressed and thought of all of the relatives that we dreaded seeing and spending time with over the Christmas break. And with people such as the over-affectionate aunt or the obnoxious cousin. And we thought it would be a great idea if we created a narrative in which Arthur's figure, who had the same mindset as Arthur Schopenhauer, is kind of like a Scrooge-like figure. We created a narrative in which I played a 5-year-old nephew of Uncle Artie, and it's just through seeing the interactions between a 5-year-old Nick Maffei and Uncle Artie, you kind of reveal the philosophy of Uncle Artie. Here's a little introduction to the series, which this doesn't explain any of the philosophy, but it kind of sets up for the video series.
I just don't understand. Why does Uncle Artie have to stay over for Christmas? He's such a Scrooge. He's always negative. He's always negative. He's always making fun of the women in our family. And he's always trying to describe and explain his philosophy of the will. Wah, 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 wah. I just don't understand. Why can't he stay at a hotel or something? Wah, 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 wah. I'll try to be nice, but I don't know. He'll just maintain his gloomy self. Alright, I'll see you later.
So that gave you context for the video series that will be eventually or gradually showing. Alright, like I said before, Arthur is very cocky, and he said that Immanuel Kant and Hegel were wrong in thinking that a person's view of what is good and what is bad is caused by the world around them and the use of their brain, which is reason and logic. What keeps you going? And in his work, The Word as Will and Representation, Arthur Schopenhauer said that humans do certain things because of their desires, and a desire is something you want to do or get. And Arthur said that these desires were bad and meaningless, thus all human action was bad and meaningless. And these desires were all derived from a thing called the will, which is something that cannot be directly seen, smelled, felt, tasted, or heard, and something that you can't experience through the senses is usually called a metaphysical property. And but Arthur says that the will controls everything that you can see, smell, feel, taste, or hear. So it's kind of like gravity, but it's the desires that are inside of us. And to further explain that, the will inside of me, which you can't see or hear or any of that stuff, causes me to want something, which is also metaphysical, and thus I go get or do something which is physical. So that explains how something, or the will, causes all phenomena, that which we can see. And because of this, he says that the world is an illusion of senses. Humanity's boo-boos and band-aids. Arthur explained that seeking to satisfy one's desires causes suffering. And this is similar to the key ideas of Buddhism. And he says that there are temporary treatments, and these are art and music, which allows one to view themselves as being like part of the world rather than seeing just the world and you stepping away from it. And also through meditation, which connects back to Buddhism again. But he says the ultimate solution is the denial of the will, which most people can't do because they have to lose the will to live or have total knowledge of the nature of life. And here's episode 1 of the series that we created.
no. Hey everybody, how you doing?
Satisfactory.
You want me to get your stuff from the car and put it up in the guest room?
If that's your will.
Mr. Will again.
What did you say?
Oh, nothing. Yeah, nothing.
Something tells me you don't like my philosophy.
It's so depressing and I don't get it.
Come on, let's go have a conversation, because I find it the utmost importance that you know my ideas.
Alright, but let me go get grab an apple first, because I am so hungry.
What a grand segue, my nephew.
Huh?
The first lesson you must understand is that humans are only motivated by desires. You go to the kitchen because you desire an apple. And all other forms of phenomena that are affected by human action, such as that of the cup falling over and you grabbing the apple, are caused by human desire. And that human desire is something one cannot see, hear, or smell.
Well, I was hungry and the cup was in my way.
Indeed, but that hunger is desire, and that cup would not have fallen over without you trying to satisfy your desire.
Whatever your philosophy may say, nothing's going to prevent this apple from being so delicious.
Indeed, that may be, but the desire in you eating the apple is meaningless. As a matter of fact, all that you will do in your life is meaningless.
Gee, you're really putting a damper on my Christmas spirit.
I'm just letting you know. And ultimately, you trying to satisfy your desires causes suffering.
Well, are there any treatments to this suffering?
Well, the best cure is the denial of desires, but I don't think you'll be able to do that. The only way to help yourself out is through art and music.
How does it sound, Lombardi?
Satisfactory.
How does it look?
Looks alright. Oh, and there's also meditation. Buddhists are really good at it. Try.
I covered politics. The way that I kind of put it in the phrase for a 5-year-old was that government should just make sure no one takes your cheese and crackers or get in the way of your snack time. And it's okay if one person is in charge as long as he is nice. So Schopenhauer had this view that he didn't care whether it was like a monarch or if like we have a system like electing someone every 4 years. He said he'd rather be ruled by a lion than one of his fellow rats. So that kind of also shows his view on humanity is like pretty poor, but I think the thing that I could connect it to most would be like the libertarian views like that Ron Paul has, which is just like the government is only there to protect the people and stop humans from destroying themselves, basically. That's what he thought. Because he thought that our nature was like we would just destroy ourselves.
Who do you think's going to be the next president? My dad's always talking about some guy named Newt Gingrich.
Ron Paul's the champion of liberty. Not that I care too much for politics anymore.
That guy looks so old on TV. I don't like him.
He's one of 2 people who understand the true purpose of government.
Who's the other?
Well, me anyway. Me, obviously. The government should only be here to make sure that the human race doesn't destroy itself. Nothing more.
So all those people have power just to prevent us from hitting ourselves?
Yes, and each other.
So then it doesn't really matter who's president, right?
It doesn't matter, as long as they stay out of my way. I don't care if they pick a new one every 4 years, or it's the same person and his family for their entire lives. It just doesn't matter.
So, he didn't have a very positive view on women. He said, the distinctions he made was that they cared more about other people, but instead of looking at that as like a good thing, virtue. He said that was just like a weakness. But he did say they were like more sober in their judgment than men were. But he also thought that women were essentially only here for like the purpose of reproduction, and that was about it. Probably because he hated his mother too.
Nancy, bring me a drink. My feet hurt. Dinner was supposed to be an hour ago. What kind of place is this? I'm cold.
I don't understand. Why are you so mean to your sister and my mom?
It's women's nature to obey. We're only here to serve.
That doesn't sound very fair.
Well, you're entitled to your own opinion, but it's wrong. Women are only here to make babies.
And again, the view that like sexuality was only good for reproduction, and he was actually celibate throughout his entire life except for that like one child that he had, because he thought that giving, like it was just kind of like that, back to that Buddhist thing, like you have to restrain yourself from all desires essentially, and like after you have a desire, it's like he said that your mind is tricking you, like and, you can overcome that, and then you'll be happier apparently. And he says it gets better when you're older, or like your sex drive goes like lessens.
Alright, Arthur's view on social ethics was that he thought humans act because of their desires, like Nick was mentioning before. He thought that people do good things if they wanted to, based on compassion that people have, and that they would do bad things because they were either selfish or they had the desire to do something bad, which is through malice or egoism. Arthur also agreed with other people that actions that are taken are the only ones that are possible, and this can be also referred to as determinism. He was a strong proponent of that. He thought that the idea was that things that happen are predetermined. Arthur wrote a book about ethics, or he wrote 2 collections of essays, and it was put into a book, and it was called The 2 Fundamental Problems with Ethics. And they were basically pointing out the flaws that humans don't act upon their own will, so then there wouldn't really be a view on ethics. And here's the next episode. Finally.
Season finale.
In other news, there was a man arrested today who allegedly murdered 3 people during a home invasion. I'm Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, San Diego.
Why would anyone do that?
Well, haven't you read the book I sent you for your birthday?
What a great present, Uncle Artie. Like I'll ever read this.
Clearly you have. There are 2 fundamental problems with the ethics of humans. We are not free to do what we think we want. It is human instinct to act upon our desires. That man desired to rob a house more than he desired to stay out of jail. When the people inside found him, he killed them instead of being caught and brought to jail.
Well, I know the difference between right and wrong.
No, Nicholas, you know the difference between what you view as the right choice and what you view as the wrong choice. These thoughts mean nothing until you act upon them. And when you do act, it is only through human nature of following desires.
Why do you always have to prove me wrong on these issues and questions?
Because you do not see the world as I do.
Now,
so logic is kind of tied in with ethics, and Arthur thought that people don't use logic because, as we've said